Our Country's Good was written in 1988 for a specific company of actors at the Royal Court Theatre in London and is based on a true story of convicts rehearsing a play. Actors and writer engaged in an intensive 2-week workshop researching the themes of the novel The Playmaker by Thomas Keneally, upon which the play is based. The final version of the play was presented in conjunction with The Recruiting Officer and was directed by Max Stafford Clark, who identified the main themes as the human ability to transcend circumstances, the potential of theatre to change lives, and the power of language. The play follows the true life story of a group of convicts who, having been deported to the colony of Australia, found themselves required to act in a production of George Farquhar's comedy, The Recruiting Officer, which was staged in the penal colony of New South Wales in 1789. The actual production was the responsibility of Ralph Clark, an idealistic young lieutenant who believed the drama would be a more salutary lesson than public hanging. How ironic then that the choice of Farquhar's play should show British officers in such an unflattering light. Our Country's Good by Timberlake Wertenbaker is a play that begins in the hold of the vessel Sirius, a convict ship. The ship is on its way to Australia, where the British Empire notoriously shipped criminals to get them away from the British Isles. At the start of the play, convicts aboard the Sirius witness a flogging and speak fearfully about what lies ahead. In Australia, in Sydney Cove, an Aboriginal Australian comment on the arrival of the First Fleet and the British Empire's presence in Australia. At first, he is curious, but that curiosity soon turns to confusion and fear. The play then focuses on 4 British men who have just arrived in Sydney. Their ranks and names are Governor Arthur Phillip, Captain Watkin Tenk, Captain David Collins, and Midshipman Harry Brewer. They are engaged in a debate about the purpose of imprisonment. On one side of the debate is the idea that it is to punish criminals, and on the other side that it exists to rehabilitate them. They also debate whether or not criminals are born as such, or whether crime is a learned behavior. Tenk tells the others that the convicts are entertained by hangings, so the governor orders the midshipman to find a hangman. There are 3 criminals who have been found guilty of stealing food, and they will be hanged. But the governor also wants the convicts to put on a play as less violent entertainment. Our Country's Good features a play within a play. Other dramatic works that do this include A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare and Noises Off by Michael Frayn, among many others. Harry has 2 of the 3 thieves hanged, but then is filled with guilt. One of the thieves, whose name was Handy Baker, was after the adoration of a woman Harry also pursues. Her name was Duckling Smith, and she was a convict. Harry shares the governor's plan to put on a play with Second Lieutenant Ralph Clark. Ralph decides he will lead the convicts in performing the play. He thinks if he does this, the governor will notice him and perhaps grant him favor. For the play, Ralph selects The Recruiting Officer, a comedy written by George Farquhar during the Restoration period in England, which took place during the latter half of the 17th century. As Ralph casts convicts in the play, officers continue to debate criminality and punishment. Some of them oppose the performance of the play, while others support it. They vote as to whether or not the play should continue, and the majority vote in favor of it. So Ralph is allowed to continue his work and to plan the rehearsals. Duckling gets a part in the play by complaining about Harry's attentions. Several of the other female characters argue. One of them cannot read, another feels unequal to playing the part she's been given. The hangman, whose name is James Ketch Freeman, tells Ralph that he is innocent of the charges that landed him in Australia. He doesn't want to be a hangman, but when he was convicted, he was told he had to hang or be hanged. One thing after another goes wrong, and the first rehearsal is a complete mess that leads to many of the convicts being imprisoned. Because of this, Ralph wants to put a stop to the play. He tells Philip this, but Philip insists he continues the play. He wants to prove that incarceration can have a rehabilitating effect on convicts and believes the play will serve that purpose. Meanwhile, Harry is visited by the ghosts of the two men he had hanged. Ralph begins a second rehearsal during which some of the convicts show improvement in their roles while Ross humiliates some of the others, forcing them to show off their scars from being flogged. Harry and Freeman prepare for the third hanging. A woman named Liz is to be executed for stealing food, but she insists she is innocent of the charge. Harry is continuously visited by ghosts and he collapses. When Ketch returns to the play, the other convicts refuse to act with him because he is the hangman. The rehearsal ends. As is common with plays within plays, the characters also discuss the purpose of a play. Each of the officers has his own ideas of what a play's purpose should be. Duckling swears to love Harry, but when he collapses, he dies. Ralph and a convict, Mary, rehearse privately, which leads to their confessions of mutual love. The officers discuss Liz's fate and allow her one more opportunity to speak up and defend herself. Collins insists they have a retrial, but Liz delays with a promise to perform in the play anyway. Before the play begins, the convicts discuss their plans for afterward. Some want to try to escape, others plan futures together. The play begins and from the start receives uproarious applause. Our Country's Good is a history play based on real events that took place in the 18th century among the first convicts transported from England to Australian penal colonies. Conditions were extremely harsh there, but Wertenbaker's play focuses on the convicts' staging of George Farquhar's romantic comedy, The Recruiting Officer. This actually occurred at Sydney Cove on 4th June 1789, the first ever performance of a European play on Australian soil. Wertenbaker uses the play within a play to explore themes of crime and punishment, the impact of colonial expansion, hierarchies of class and gender, and above all, theatre's potential to transform individuals and societies. At its premiere in 1988 at the Royal Court Theatre, Our Country's Good was staged alongside The Recruiting Officer, featuring the same cast, so that both actors and audience were free to explore the parallels and intersections between the two plays.